Epictetus' brutal truth about control. Right now, without realizing it, something controls you. It decides how you feel when you wake up, how confident you act around others, and how quickly your peace collapses when life doesn't go your way. And the most dangerous part is this: you probably believe that control is normal. Over 2,000 years ago, a man who owned nothing, commanded nothing, and was treated as property discovered a truth so ruthless that it makes modern ideas of happiness look like self-deception. He realized that most people are not suffering because life is hard, but because they are mentally untrained. His name was Epictetus, and his philosophy does not comfort you, motivate you, or make you feel better. It exposes the invisible chains that govern your emotions, your desires, and your reactions. And once you see them, you can never unsee them. If your peace depends on approval, outcomes, or certainty, then what you're about to hear will either free you or deeply disturb you. Most people believe their suffering comes from hardship, betrayal, loss, or bad luck. But Epictetus would tell you that this belief itself is the cage, because nothing enslaves a human being faster than the refusal to accept responsibility for their inner life. Long before modern psychology, before neuroscience, before self-help culture diluted philosophy into comfort, Epictetus exposed the most dangerous illusion a person can live under, the belief that peace is found outside of oneself. Epictetus understood something most people spend their entire lives avoiding, that the human mind does not suffer because life is cruel, but because the mind is undisciplined, impulsive, and addicted to false control. He saw that people exhaust themselves trying to command outcomes, people, and circumstances, while neglecting the only domain where true power exists: their judgments, their desires, and their responses. This is why Epictetus begins not with how to succeed, but with how to stop being internally ruled. He teaches that before you can live well, you must first stop obeying every thought that appears in your mind. Because the untrained mind does not think, it reacts. It does not choose, it obeys habit. And most people mistake this obedience for personality, identity, or fate. According to Epictetus, the greatest tragedy is not poverty, illness, or rejection, but confusion about what belongs to you and what never did. The moment you confuse external things with your own worth, you create a fragile identity that must constantly be defended, validated, and protected. And this constant defense is the source of chronic anxiety, anger, and exhaustion. Epictetus dismantles this false identity mercilessly. He reminds us that your body is not fully yours. Your reputation is not yours. Your possessions are not yours. Your status is not yours. And even the people you love are not yours to command or preserve. They are on loan from life, temporary, unstable, and governed by forces beyond your authority. When you build your happiness on borrowed things, you guarantee fear as a permanent companion. This is why Epictetus insists that desire must be trained before it destroys you. Desire, when left undisciplined, becomes tyranny. It whispers that happiness is just one achievement away, one relationship away, one recognition away, and as long as you believe this lie, you will remain restless, dissatisfied, and internally dependent. He teaches that most people are not unhappy because they lack something, but because they desire without restraint. They want life to obey their preferences, and when it refuses, they call it injustice. But Epictetus would say that the injustice is not in life, it is in the expectation. This is where Stoic philosophy becomes deeply uncomfortable, because it does not soothe the ego, it confronts it. Epictetus does not ask you what happened to you, He asks how you interpreted it. He does not ask what you lost. He asks why you believed you owned it. He does not ask who wronged you. He asks why their actions were given authority over your peace. To Epictetus, emotional suffering is not proof of depth or sensitivity. It is evidence of misplaced values. When anger erupts, it is because pride was wounded. When envy arises, it is because comparison was entertained. When despair sets in, it is because hope was attached to outcomes rather than character. He teaches that no event has the power to harm your inner life unless you invite it in, and most people unknowingly open the door every day. They rehearse insults long after they occur. They relive failures repeatedly. They imagine futures that do not exist and suffer as if they already have. In this way, they punish themselves more thoroughly than any external enemy ever could. Epictetus calls this voluntary suffering, and he believed it was the defining sickness of the human condition. People choose disturbance because they refuse to let go of control, where control is impossible. They cling to expectations instead of cultivating endurance. They demand fairness from a world that never promised it. But Epictetus does not leave the listener in despair. He offers an alternative path, one that replaces fragility with strength and confusion with clarity. He teaches that freedom begins the moment you stop demanding that reality conform to your desires, and instead demand that your desires conform to reality. This shift changes everything. When you stop needing praise, insults lose their sting. When you stop fearing loss, threats lose their power. When you stop attaching your worth to outcomes, failure loses its ability to define you. What remains is not emptiness, but stability. Epictetus believed that true confidence does not come from success, but from knowing that no matter what happens, you will not abandon your principles. This is why he valued character above all else, because character is the one possession that cannot be taken from you unless you surrender it willingly. He would say that a person who maintains integrity under pressure is invincible, because circumstances can bend the body, but only consent can bend the soul. And most people give that consent unconsciously every time they react without reflection. This is why Epictetus placed such importance on pause, not silence, not passivity, but the space between impulse and action. In that space, freedom is either claimed or forfeited. The untrained mind rushes to judgment, emotion, and reaction. The trained mind observes, questions, and chooses. Epictetus teaches that when something happens, you must first say to yourself, "This is only an impression, not reality itself." Because impressions arrive loud, emotional, and urgent, but they are not truth. They are invitations, and you always have the right to decline. This single practice separates the philosopher from the slave. The slave reacts immediately. The philosopher delays, and in that delay, clarity emerges. Epictetus also understood that discipline is not punishment, but preparation. He believed that comfort weakens the mind, while challenge sharpens it. This is why he encouraged voluntary discomfort, not for suffering's sake, but to prove to yourself that you need less than you think. When you train yourself to endure hunger, cold, rejection, or uncertainty without panic, you reclaim authority over your instincts. You stop being ruled by fear of discomfort. You become adaptable, flexible, and internally stable. This is profoundly relevant in the modern world, where convenience has made people fragile, stimulation has made them restless, and comparison has made them insecure. Epictetus offers an antidote: simplicity, restraint, and self-command. He reminds us that peace is not found by adding more to life, but by subtracting dependency. The fewer things you need to be happy, the harder you are to control. This is not asceticism, it is strategy. And perhaps the deepest teaching Epictetus leaves us with is this: life is not happening to you, it is testing you. Every inconvenience, delay, insult, and disappointment is an opportunity to either strengthen your ruling mind or surrender it. He believed that philosophy exists not to be admired, but to be lived, especially when life becomes uncomfortable. Anyone can appear calm when things go well. Stoicism reveals itself when they do not. Epictetus teaches that the goal is not to eliminate emotion, but to prevent emotion from governing reason, to feel without being dragged, to care without clinging, to act without attachment. And when you live this way, something remarkable happens. Fear loosens its grip. Anxiety fades into irrelevance. You stop chasing validation and start cultivating self-respect. You stop arguing with reality and start cooperating with it. This is not a louder life, but a deeper one, not an easier life, but a freer one. And Epictetus would remind you of this final truth: no one is free who is not master of themselves, and no one is enslaved unless they surrender that mastery. If you seek discipline over chaos, clarity over confusion, and inner freedom in an unstable world, then this is exactly what Stoic Gateway is here to guide you toward. Subscribe to Stoic Gateway for deep Stoic philosophy, timeless wisdom, and mental training for a calm, resilient, and unshakable mind.